Welcome back to my workshop. Now today we're going to try something different and we're going to try some animation. Now a little while ago I got interested in animation again and as you may have seen in my opening intro there's a little first attempt at animation. So let's have a look at doing that. So if you've been to my channel before you might know that my logo, let me show you my logo here. Okay, originally come from, I got a whiteboard bought for me for a present and my nephew drew this little guy on it. Now this guy, little Frank here, he's since become my logo. So in the beginning credits now, in my intro, you'll see my little plasticine attempt at a bit of animation. I'm afraid he didn't survive very well. Look, it's so sad. Now he's made of plasticine, so he's too heavy for himself and he's basically collapsed. So what I want to do is in this video quickly, I want to make a new little Frank, but I need to make an armature. Now an armature is the skeleton of the model, the puppet. Okay, so I could have used something like one of these, but the movement is not always enough. So what I need is a wire-framed armature, and I'll show you, I've never done it before, but I'll show you my attempts at making an armature for little Frank. So what do we need to make this masterpiece? Right, first of all, we need some aluminium wire. Now you can get this off of Amazon. The stuff I'm using is, let's have a quick look. It's about 1.5 mil across. You can buy this off Amazon. Some side cutters, a little pair of pliers, some metal epoxy putty or just epoxy putty. Again, you can get it off Amazon. I got it out of Halfords. Also, some little tie downs. Now you could use normal nuts. Okay, I'll explain what these are for later. And you need obviously a bolt and a wing nut, two of them, pencil, and a nice little drawing of the fella you want to make. Okay, let's start. So that's the first step. What I've done is I've taken my picture of my little Frank and I've drawn the skeleton or the armature inside to see the position of the hips and the shoulders and the knees. Now this obviously, it looked like he's got little dumpy legs, so to make his legs a little bit longer I've just extended the lines a little bit. Then basically laid over my wire over, let's find the legs, over each joint. So every bend here I've made a bend. Okay, so basically creating this skeleton with pieces of wire. Now what I've got to do is, because this wire is a little bit flexible, you need it flexible but you also need it strong. So I've doubled up, I've cut twice as much as I measured, and what I have to do now is wind these two together to increase the strength but retain the flexibility. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a drill to do that. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, to wind our two pieces of wire together, what I've done is taken my two pieces of wire and I put one end in a drill. Okay, so they're the same length. Then for the purpose of this, I'm going to use my little vise, which some of you might have seen before. And basically all I'm going to do is capture these in the vise. Obviously if you haven't got a vise, you can use a pair of pliers. Let me just grip those. Okay, so they're both gripped, and then all I do is literally slowly wind them up. Okay, then that gives me this. Take this out of the drill. Okay, so instead of a single piece like this, we've got a double piece, so but it's still flexible. Okay, so if I do that with all my pieces of wire, this was his spine. Let's do the rest of them. So now we've got our wire wound, we've laid it over the picture and we've bent it at the major joints, so the hips and the shoulders, and we've put in the spine. So what we need to do now is join all these together, and we don't need the picture anymore, so we can take the picture away, and we've got our little figure here like this. So what we need to do now is we need to get this spine through where the hips are. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly poke through here, feed this through, and then I'll show you how to wind it on. Okay, so we now want our spine to go through his hips. Now the easiest way to do this is approximately in the middle of the hips. Basically take this and twist it, and that will open up a gap. Okay, then what you do is you wind in your spine, if we can, like this, make it look easy. Okay, wind our spine in, leaving a little tail like this, because we'll need that. Okay, and then straighten the legs out again. Okay, so now that's thread through the middle. It'll actually thread like a normal bolt, and the legs are straight. Then what you do is you open up these wires, hope you can see that, and wrap them around the hips. Okay, then with the pair of pliers, obviously crunch it into place. Okay, so you should end up with something like this. Right, what I might do is crush that a little bit more with a bigger pair of pliers, just to make it a little bit more secure. Okay, and then we do the similar principle with the arms. Okay, that was a little bit more difficult than I expected. Now his shoulders are in place. He's a little bit wibbly wobbly, but we can sort that out. His hips are done. So now what we need to do is concentrate on his feet before we go much further. And what we need to do is put in these little tie downs. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, so what we do is we take his feet and then we open up so he looks like he's got a little pair of claws, yeah, on both feet. Okay. Now these little inserts, or you could use nuts or anything like that. Now they're going to be used for screwing the little mannequin onto a base so you can move him around when you're doing the animation. So what we're going to do, take a little insert, put it between his newfound claws. Okay, let's make sure we got enough. Okay, so you should end up with something like this. Try and make it as secure as possible, but we're going to be putting epoxy putty around this anyway. Okay, so let me make this a bit more secure, but that's the idea. Right, so we've now got a little fella. He's got his little feet in. These are his tie downs. Okay, they should be okay. What we need to do now is put on his hips and his shoulders some epoxy putty. Now this is probably because it takes about 10 minutes to dry, and then it's solid. So we use this. I haven't used it before. Let's try and use it. I think it's a bit stinky, so we're going to put on some gloves. Okay, and what you do is you take however much you need. So it comes like this, and in the middle is either the putty or the hardener. I don't know which way it is. You select how much you need. So for his hips, we're probably going to need about 1 centimetre. Let's cut that with something. Use a Stanley blade. So we need about 1 centimetre of it. Okay, and then all you do, take the plastic cover off obviously, then you just mix it together. You can see here you've got the darker bit in the middle and the outside bit. So I presume that's the putty and this is the hardener, and you just work it together until it's a uniform shade. Okay, so let me do that, and then once you've done it, I think you only get a few minutes to actually work it before it starts going hard. Okay, so that's it. Oh, yeah, that's it. Okay, so this is now a uniform shade of grey, and what you do is you actually put it around the hip joints. Let's break this in half to make it easier. Put this around the hip joint to hold it all in place. Now this is going to go rock hard because you don't want the hips moving when you're animating the model. Okay, and then the same with the shoulders. Okay, so we'll leave that for 10 minutes to go rock hard, and then we've got to do something similar with the feet. Okay, right, careful where you put these because you don't want it sticking to anything. Okay, so what I've done now is his hips and his shoulders are starting to dry. I've concentrated on his shoes. I've put the tie downs in, and I put the bolts in to stop any putty getting into the threads. And then basically put putty around this to hold the tie downs in place. Okay, so that's both of his little shoes done. So what we'll do now is we'll leave that to dry. I've got a little bit more putty here. Before this goes off, I want to strengthen where his thighs and his shins would be, and obviously his upper arms and lower arms, because obviously they shouldn't bend, but obviously leaving the knees and the elbows so they can be flexed. So I'll quickly wrap some more epoxy putty around that, and then I'll show you how he looks. Right, so we've left it 10 minutes. Now, as you can see, what I've done is as well as the hips and the shoulders with the epoxy putty, I've also put some on his upper arms, lower arms, his thighs, a little bit on his shins, and obviously his feet. So now this, I don't know if we can hear this has gone rock hard. Yeah, so this putty goes really hard. So the idea is your legs don't bend here, so we don't want it bending here. We just want it bending at the joints, like the knees, the hips, the elbows and the shoulders. Right, so what difference does that make? Right, what I've done is I've made the world's worst animation stage. Just a piece of ply with some holes in it and a couple of stand legs. So what happens is now you take your little tie downs, the bolts, with this little wing nut, you push it through one of the holes. Okay, that leaves the little stud sticking out, and then that screws into the bottom of your foot. Let's try that. Screw, 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 screw. You only go in a little bit, and then you tighten it with the wing nut. Okay, so then that, your little man stands up. But not only does he stand up, he can now pivot on that one point. Okay, so you can actually move him around. Okay, and he can stay in the position. And his knees can bend. His hips can bend. Yeah, so then he'll stay in whatever position you put him in. Okay. That's the idea. Boing. Right, I guess we've still got his hands to do and his head, but let's give him a bit more body. Okay, so to give him some body, what I'm going to use is a bit of old foam. This is just out of an old cushion that I've salvaged, and the idea is I wrap some foam around the body and then we'll cover it with something afterwards. Obviously I want some foam above his shoulders just to give him a bit of shoulders. So basically what I'm going to do, put it up against him like this, stick it around him and then trim it up afterwards. So let's see how successful that is. So just using a Sharpie, just going to basically draw where his spine is, where his shoulders are. Okay, so this, just open this up. So we just cut into it with, I'm just using a Stanley blade, but you can use scissors or a scalpel or something. Cut, 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 not all the way through, about halfway through. Then where his shoulders go, again only halfway through. Don't cut your fingers off, that's not a good thing. Okay, so I've opened up a little T. What I'll do is I'll put it this way, so the joint is going to be at the back. Oh, I need a bit for his head as well. Slice, slice. Okay, so basically I got this. Oh, just one. Okay, then fit it inside. It's a bit blocky now. Okay, so now his upper half is encased in foam. Just going to use a little bit of hot glue to stick that together. Okay. Okay, so we now got a little square man. Okay, now I have to trim it with a pair of scissors to try and get it some sort of body shape. How do I do that? So, little Frank is obviously quite straight, not much of a shape there, but he's not this shape. So let's trim him up with a pair of scissors and see if we can get him into a Frank shape. So this one is just trimming him with scissors. Obviously don't take too much off. Oh, come on. Trim, trim, see waste. Okay, so little Frank's starting to take shape. He's now got a foam body, but he still looks a bit skinny on his legs and his arms. So what I'm going to do is just quickly put a little bit of silver foil around his arms and legs. So just normal kitchen foil. I don't know how much I'm going to need. Just take a bit of this and then basically scrumple it around his legs. Okay, then tear off the excess or cut it, whatever takes your fancy. Okay, just to give him a little bit of volume on his legs. Okay, and that should still bend. Obviously he's going to have clothes on. Okay, do that to both his legs. Obviously we've still got to sort out his hands, so leave those poking out. Okay, little man. What I'm going to do now is to hold it all together. I'm going to cover the whole thing in plumber's tape. Now obviously the reason I'm using this is quite thin, but it's going to stay flexible. Okay, so what I shall do is quickly wrap that all around him. Right, so we now have our little mummified dummy, and he can still bend and still bend. Okay, right, on to the next bit. Okay, so we've got a little fella now. Looks like a mummy, so he needs some clothes. What I'm going to use is some felt and literally just draw around him and quickly make some clothes. I'll probably give him a better wardrobe later on. Let me get on with that. So very quickly, made him a quick wardrobe, blue shirt, grey trousers, little belt. It's not very good, but it'll do for now. You can see all the seams are nicely hidden with hot glue, but this will do. He still moves, I can still move him, still bends. Oh, he's fallen over backwards. Okay, but obviously he's missing a head and he's missing some hands. So let's make those. Okay, so little Frank here is very poorly dressed, but I will make him a different outfit later on. Seems to be missing a head. Now, if we look at the picture of little Frank, he's actually got quite a big head in proportion to his body. So we have to make this oversize. But the problem is if we make it out of solid plasticine or polymer clay, it'll be too heavy. So the plan is to use some tin foil screwed into a ball and then covered in polymer clay and then sculpted into his head. So let me try that. It's going to take a while, so let's do it quickly. Right, so I've jumped forward a little bit. Our little man, I've put a collar on his shirt. I've made him some hands out of the epoxy putty. I don't know how successful these are going to be, but he's got fingers, but it don't bend very well. But it's better than not having any hands at all. The head, I've sculpted the head as well as I can. Now that's got to go in the oven now for about 45 minutes, I think it is. And this is the head at the moment. Say hello, head. Hello. Okay, so I've just got to stick that in the oven and see what happens. Right, so I'm just going to go and put his head in the oven, and I think I'll leave him here for a minute. I'm sure he won't go anywhere. Right, so little Frank's going in the oven now for 130 degrees for about 45 minutes. Here he is. Let's leave him to it. Right, his head's in the oven. What I'm going to do now is, oh, hang on. He moved. Right, what I'm going to do now is quickly look at his hands. This is what I've done with the epoxy putty. All I'm going to do is round these off a little bit using my pretend Dremel. See if I can get them a little bit smoother. So that's it. His head's cooked, and I painted it, and I painted his hands, and then did the final assembly. So the idea was to make a character, the same as my logo. The original Walter Frank was a little bit poorly, basically too heavy for himself. So now this is what he looks like. Ta-da! Yep, so he's all done now. All I've got to do now is learn how to animate him. Okay, so if you want to see more videos about this, I'll see if I can get him to do some walking and do some things. Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see if we can make him walk and talk. Alright, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Say goodbye. Bye. Now today we're going to try some, and then wind it into the chuck until it's secure. Oh, we'll drop that. It's not very good at all, is it? Let's do that again.